Most people spend $200, $300, sometimes $400 a year trying to keep their garden green and their livestock fed. And they see this, and they pull it straight out of the ground, call it a weed, and toss it on the burn pile. But what if I told you that this single plant contains more available nitrogen than a standard bag of 10-10-10 fertilizer, and a protein content that rivals premium alfalfa hay? I stopped buying synthetic fertilizer 2 seasons ago. I cut my poultry and livestock feed supplement bill by 40%. And the only thing I added to this property was this plant, growing in soil most people would write off as useless. Today I'm going to show you exactly what this plant is, the verified science behind why it works, and the 3 specific ways you need to process it so you don't accidentally burn your plants or harm your animals. And stay with me, because later in this video, I'll tell you the one animal you should never feed this to, or you will regret it. If you're new here, this channel is built around one idea, that the most productive homestead is also the least expensive one. If that's the kind of thinking you're into, stick around. You'll fit right in. Let's start with what most people get completely wrong. If you search comfrey for garden right now, you'll find dozens of videos that tell you to just throw the leaves on the bed. That advice isn't wrong, it's just dangerously incomplete. And the reason your last attempt may not have worked is because you were treating this plant like any other surface mulch. It isn't. Here is the first thing you'll notice if you dig one of these up. Look at this root system. Comfrey, specifically the species Symphytum officinale, develops a taproot that can extend 6 to 10 feet into the subsoil. I want you to understand the mechanical significance of that. Your vegetable root systems most sit in the top 12 inches of your topsoil. They can only access what's already there. Comfrey reaches past all of that down into the mineral-rich parent material beneath and physically transports potassium, phosphorus, calcium, and trace elements back up into its leaves. Agronomists sometimes call this mineral mining. It is a real, documented biological mechanism, not a metaphor. Now here is the number that matters, and I'm pulling this from University Extension research, specifically work compiled through trials at research institutions in the UK, where comfrey has been studied in agricultural systems since the 1950s. Comfrey leaves contain roughly 2 to 3% nitrogen by dry weight. A standard bag of 10-10-10 fertilizer contains 10% nitrogen, but that nitrogen is either derived from synthetic urea or ammonium, meaning it is immediately water-soluble and prone to leaching out of your soil before your plants can even use it. Comfrey nitrogen is organically bound in protein compounds. It releases slowly as the leaves break down, feeding your soil food web at the same time. Now there's something important I need to be honest about here. The nitrogen percentage in comfrey leaves sounds lower on paper than synthetic fertilizer. The reason it outperforms in practice is not the raw number, it's the delivery system. Slow-release organic nitrogen feeds your plants over weeks. It doesn't spike and crash the way synthetic nitrogen does. And every time those leaves decompose, they're also feeding bacteria and fungi, which in turn unlock phosphorus and other nutrients that are already in your soil, but currently locked up in forms your plants can't absorb. Potassium is where comfrey genuinely shines against the competition. Fresh comfrey leaves contain approximately 5% potassium by dry weight in some analyses. That is higher than most animal manures and comparable to or exceeding the potassium content in wood ash, which most gardeners treat as liquid gold. Potassium is the nutrient your fruiting plants, your tomatoes, squash, beans, peppers, are most hungry for when it's time to set flowers and swell fruit. So let's put the myth to rest. Comfrey is not just a garden hack. It is a legitimate agronomic tool. It has been used in commercial permaculture and organic farming systems for decades. What makes it feel like a weed is that it grows aggressively, spreads if you let it, and costs you absolutely nothing once you establish it. The big box garden industry has no interest in telling you about it because you can't buy comfrey in a bottle. One limitation I want to name up front: comfrey contains compounds called pyrrolizidine alkaloids. These have been shown in laboratory studies to be potentially harmful to the liver when consumed in large quantities over long periods. This matters most for internal human consumption, which is why I'm not recommending you eat this plant as food. External use as a garden amendment and carefully managed livestock fodder is where its track record is strong and consistent. We'll talk about safe livestock application in detail in a few minutes. Also worth noting, comfrey, especially the Bocking 14 cultivar, which is a sterile hybrid developed by the Henry Doubleday Research Association in the UK, does not spread by seed. It spreads only by root division. That gives you control. Bocking 14 is the variety I recommend and the one I use here. It grows vigorously without becoming invasive the way its wild relatives can in some regions. With that foundation laid, the mechanism, the numbers, the limitations, let's get into how you actually use this. And here is where I'll separate the information that works from the information that sounds good but fails in the field. The first method of application is what most gardeners try first and get half right. They throw fresh leaves directly onto the soil as mulch. Here is why that underperforms and what to do differently. Fresh leaves decompose, but slowly. Laid on the surface, thick comfrey leaves can take 3 to 6 weeks to fully break down in warm weather. During that time, if the pile is too thick, it can mat and actually repel water from the soil surface, creating localized drought stress for your plants. Worse, in some climates, a pile of rotting leaves directly on the soil surface is a perfect habitat for slugs. This is not the wrong method, it's just the slow method. Chop the leaves before you mulch with them. This is called chop and drop. Cut the leaves into sections roughly 3 to 4 inches long, lay them 2 inches deep maximum, and keep them away from direct contact with plant stems. The increased surface area accelerates decomposition dramatically. You're looking at 10 to 14 days rather than 6 weeks. But even that's not the fastest or most effective method for immediate plant feeding. The method that produces the fastest, most bioavailable results is what is commonly called comfrey liquid fertilizer, sometimes nicknamed comfrey tea. Though that name is misleading because the best version isn't brewed like tea at all, it's fermented, and there is a specific, critical difference between an aerobic brew and an anaerobic ferment that most people never explain. Let me walk you through it precisely. The aerobic method means the liquid is oxygenated, either by stirring daily or using an aquarium air pump. Aerobic fermentation is faster, it's ready in 5 to 7 days in warm weather, and it smells significantly less offensive. The result is a microbrich liquid that functions more like a soil drench or biostimulant. It feeds the soil biology. The anaerobic method, no air, sealed lid, takes longer, typically 3 to 5 weeks, and produces a liquid that is distinctly higher in potassium and plant-available nitrogen. It also smells extraordinarily bad. I'm not exaggerating. The fermentation of protein compounds in a sealed, oxygen-free environment produces ammonia and sulfur compounds. If you're making this near neighbors or inside a greenhouse, use the aerobic method. Here is the ratio you need. Pack a large container. I use a 15-gallon bucket, about 1/3 full of fresh comfrey leaves by volume. Fill the remainder with water. In the anaerobic method, weigh the leaves down with a stone or a brick to keep them submerged. In the aerobic method, stir once a day or run your air pump continuously. When it is ready, and this is the smell test that no one talks about but experienced growers all know, the liquid will shift from smelling sharply of rotting vegetation to a more muted, stable, earthy ferment. The sharp ammonia edge softens. The liquid will be deep brown to black. That color shift combined with the smell change is your signal. The volatile compounds have done their work. Now, how do you apply it? This is the step where people burn their plants, and I want you to avoid that. The concentrated liquid straight from the bucket is too strong for direct root zone application. You must dilute it. The standard dilution is 1 part liquid to 10 parts water. That gives you a 1:10 ratio. The liquid turns from dark brown to a pale amber. Some describe it as weak tea color. That is your target. Apply this to the root zone of your plants, not the leaves. Comfrey extract has a low enough pH that direct foliar contact in high concentrations can cause leaf scorch, especially on young transplants. Apply to the soil at the drip line. Once a week during active growth is appropriate, and do not apply to seedlings under 3 weeks old. Now here is where most gardening channels stop. They cover the fertilizer application and move on. But if you're raising chickens, ducks, rabbits, pigs, cattle, or goats, what I'm about to tell you is where the real money is. Because this plant doesn't just feed your soil, it can meaningfully supplement your livestock nutrition. Let's talk protein. Comfrey leaves at their nutritional peak, just before or during flowering, contain approximately 15 to 25% crude protein on a dry matter basis. That range varies with soil fertility, plant age, and season, so I want to be careful not to cite a single fixed number as gospel. What I can tell you is that multiple university and agricultural extension analyses have placed comfrey protein content consistently in the same range as alfalfa hay, which runs 14 to 22% crude protein depending on the cutting. For context, average grass hay sits at 7 to 12%. The first thing you'll notice if you try to feed comfrey fresh is that many animals, particularly chickens, pigs, and rabbits, will eat it immediately and enthusiastically. Cattle and goats are more variable. Some accept it fresh, some do not. However, there is a specific reason some animals hesitate with fresh comfrey, and this is the insider knowledge I referenced at the start. Fresh comfrey leaves are covered in fine, stiff hairs called trichomes. Under your fingernail you can feel them. They're not dangerous, but to an animal with a sensitive palate, those hairs create mild irritation in the mouth. This is especially true for rabbits and some goats. The solution is simple and takes no equipment. Cut or pull the comfrey and let it wilt for 12 to 24 hours in a shaded area before feeding. Wilting collapses the trichomes. It also concentrates the nutrients slightly and for some animals improves the flavor. After wilting, acceptance rates for comfrey in rabbits and goats increase substantially. This is a step most people skip because no one mentions it, and it's the difference between an animal that ignores the pile and one that cleans it up in minutes. Now, how much can you safely feed? This is the question where I'm going to be straight with you, because some homesteading content treats comfrey as an unlimited magic feed. It is not. It is a supplement, not a staple. Quick thing before we get into the livestock side of this: if you're finding this useful, hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps this kind of practical, no-fluff content reach more people who are trying to build something real. Okay, back to it. For poultry, chickens, ducks, turkeys, comfrey works well as a free-choice green supplement. Toss it into the run 2 to 3 times per week. Because birds self-regulate green intake reasonably well and their digestive systems are efficient at processing plant matter, comfrey as a supplemental green is generally considered low risk at normal offering levels. For rabbits, comfrey can make up to 20 to 30% of the daily diet as a green supplement, but it should not replace primary hay or pellets. The fiber in comfrey is lower than in grass hay, and digestive health in rabbits depends on adequate insoluble fiber. Use comfrey to boost protein and minerals, not to replace roughage. For pigs, comfrey is considered an excellent supplemental green. Pigs are omnivores with robust digestive systems, and they have historically been fed comfrey as part of self-sufficiency farming systems. Offer it wilted or fermented for best palatability. For cattle, research from the UK suggests comfrey can be offered as part of a varied green diet. Palatability varies by individual animal. Some cattle eat it eagerly, others ignore it. Introduce it gradually alongside familiar forages. Now, I told you at the beginning of this video that there is one class of animal you should be very careful with when it comes to comfrey. Here is the answer. Comfrey is relatively high in calcium. For female ruminants, cows' calcium is generally welcome, especially during lactation. But for male small ruminants, bucks and rams, and especially wethers, which are castrated males, high calcium combined with high phosphorus in the diet increases the risk of urinary calculi, also called urinary stones. Urinary calculi in male goats and sheep is a potentially fatal condition. The standard guidance from veterinary nutrition sources is to maintain a calcium to phosphorus ratio of approximately 2 to 1 in their diet. Comfrey, fed in excess to males, can tip this ratio unfavorably. Limit comfrey to small, occasional amounts for male small ruminants, and always consult your vet if you have animals with any history of urinary issues. That is the one animal warning I referenced at the start. Now you know the full picture, not just the highlight reel. Everything I've described so far costs you money once, when you buy your first root cuttings, and $0 every year after that. Here is exactly why. Comfrey propagates almost aggressively from root sections. A root cutting as small as 2 inches can generate a full, productive plant within one growing season. The Bocking 14 variety I mentioned earlier does not set viable seed. It reproduces only through root division, which is actually an advantage. You control exactly where new plants establish. Here is the propagation method that gives you the fastest colony establishment. In early spring or early fall, both work, but fall-planted roots establish especially well because the cooler soil reduces transplant stress. Dig up a mature comfrey plant. You'll find the root system is substantial. Using a sharp spade or heavy knife, cut the root into sections, each roughly 2 to 4 inches long. Each section should ideally include a small bud or growing point, though even plain root sections will regenerate. Plant each section 2 to 3 inches deep, spacing them 24 to 36 inches apart. Do not crowd comfrey. In full production, a mature comfrey plant in good soil can produce a crown 3 to 4 feet in diameter. You want airflow between plants to reduce fungal pressure in humid climates. Water the new cuttings in well and then largely leave them alone. Comfrey is exceptionally drought-tolerant once established because of that deep taproot system we discussed earlier. It finds its own water. In year 1, avoid cutting plants more than twice to let the root system establish. In year 2 and beyond, you can cut a mature plant 4 to 6 times per growing season. One mature, well-established comfrey plant can yield approximately 4 to 8 pounds of fresh leaf material per cutting, depending on soil fertility and climate. At 4 to 6 cuts per year, a single plant produces 16 to 48 pounds of biomass annually. If you plant a hedge of 12 to 15 plants, which fits easily along a standard 30-foot fence line, you have a continuous, self-renewing supply of fertilizer material and livestock supplement that requires 0 purchased inputs, 0 water beyond natural rainfall in most climates, and no replanting from year to year. That is the loop. You plant once, you harvest repeatedly, you feed your soil and your animals, and every year you divide and spread the planting further until your entire productive area is supported by what is growing right on your own land. I told you I'd save the exact fertilizer tea recipe for the end. Here it is, step by step, so you can do this immediately after this video. Step 1. Fill a 5-gallon bucket, approximately 1/3 full, with fresh-cut comfrey leaves, loosely packed. That is roughly 3 to 4 pounds of fresh material. Step 2. Fill the bucket with water, ideally collected rainwater or water that has sat out overnight if you're on chlorinated municipal supply. Chlorine can suppress the microbial activity you want to develop. Step 3. For an aerobic brew, drop in an aquarium air stone connected to a small air pump. Run it continuously for 5 to 7 days, stirring once daily if possible. For an anaerobic brew, press the leaves down with a flat stone, seal the lid, and wait 3 to 4 weeks. Do not open it indoors. Step 4. When ready, strain the liquid through old burlap or a mesh bag. The spent leaves go straight into your compost or directly onto a garden bed as mulch. Step 5. Dilute 1 part concentrate to 10 parts water. The color of your diluted solution should resemble weak black tea. Apply directly to the root zone of your plants, not the foliage, once per week during active growth. And here is what the season looks like when you put this system in place. $0 on synthetic fertilizer, $0 on soil amendments, a meaningfully lower feed bill, and a receipt at the end of the month that shows you exactly what you saved. One plant established once, maintained by nature, doing the work of a fertilizer budget and a feed supplement simultaneously. That is not a magic trick. That is a biological system designed by decades of permaculture research and proven in working homesteads around the world. If this approach to working with your land instead of against it is the kind of content you want to see more of, the next video covers 5 other deep-rooted perennials you can use exactly the same way. Each one targets a different deficiency your soil is likely carrying right now. All the details I mentioned today, the data sources, the dilution ratios, and where to source Bocking 14 root cuttings are linked below. If you want to go deeper, the next video is already queued up for you, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Every video on this channel follows the same rule: nothing goes in unless it actually works in the real world. I'll see you in the next one.